Michael Steele's attitude to Patrick Tate was that he did not have a lot to do with him. Tate got on reasonably well with Steele and he with him. He thought 70% of people loathed him and 30% loved him. He came in the 30% bracket, he said. He said by the time Tate was released, he was aware Sarah Saunders wanted to end the relationship. She asked him for help to move. No one else would because they were terrified of Tate. He was not terrified of Tate. After the move, there was no change in the relationship with Tate ever. As to Craig Rolfe, he said he'd never had a conversation with him in his life. As to Tony Tucker, he did not see Tony Tucker very frequently at all. He had no social relationship with Tucker and only heard rumours that Tony Tucker had a drug business. Michael said he was at home when he first heard about the death of Tate from Sarah, who rang and left a message on the answer machine. Sarah told him she must have spoken to Pat while the other people were in the car, but she gave no specific time. Michael maintained contact with Sarah, who said money had been taken from Gordon Road that she needed for business and that she was trying to get it back from the police. Michael thought he'd definitely been interviewed by the police, but he said no officer tried to speak to him, which he found unusual. He classed himself as an associate of Tate. He said while he was doing walls, he was forced to be followed home, halfway home, and talk to the surveillance. He said he could not have helped the police in any way. His paying Tate's money to Sarah started in May 1995 and stopped on the 31st of October 1995. Days later, he said that would be the first days of November. He handed over £19,000. That was the money that came physically from Tucker earlier in the summer. On the 24th of November 1995, I moved Sarah Saunders. I was made aware she was going to leave well before Tate was ever released from prison on the 31st of October. Jackie and I assisted. We arrived about 9:30 to 10 in my Hilux towing a trailer. There was just Sarah Saunders and Pat Tate there then. Tate was quite okay. He was running hot and cold, and they were bickering and arguing about what could be taken. I was fetching and carrying things to the truck. It took a couple of hours to load, and I made 2 trips. Just before we finished, there was a dispute between Sarah and Pat. It was quite heated. Pat used an expression he quite often used, "I'll have you fucking nutted." It was a threat, and it means, "I'll have you shot in the head." It was temper, nose to nose, and it arose over the compact discs. It was just temper, and he didn't lay a finger on her. He wanted to cuddle her when he left. His attitude to me was exactly what it had always been, a totally friendly basis. There was no animosity between me and Pat about anything. We were just chatting away and sitting on the floor in the children's room. Then a number of people turned up. I saw Craig Rolfe's girlfriend there, Donna Jaggers, sitting in the Range Rover outside the premises in the rear near side seat. I've never seen her before in my life. I wasn't involved in the chat going on. I was more keen to get away because I realised what was going on. They were talking about cannabis, and I heard the racket of what you would call an automatic pistol. I was keen to get out. Not at any time did I ask Darren Nichols to get a gun for me. I didn't require one for any purpose. I wasn't permitted to have one, and was well aware of the fact. When I was released from prison, the fact was drawn to my attention. I could get a 10-year stretch for having a gun. Nichols once mentioned guns that Truly had. He was always rabbiting on. It was just general conversation. Nichols told me he drove Truly to Clay Pigeon Shoots, where they were drinking, and they used him as a driver. I never received a phone call from Nichols about Matty a few days after the Rettendon killings, and about Nichols getting a gun. In December 1995, Nichols never held any money that belonged to me. I never gave him any money to get a gun. The only money he had was for work. The first time I saw the gun was when it was produced in court. I've never seen any gun at Meadow Cottage. There was never no gun at Meadow Cottage that I've actually witnessed. After the 6th of December, I was at Meadow Cottage pretty regularly, if not every day. I was regularly working there. There couldn't have been a gun there because of the situation of the ceiling at the time. If it had been leaning against the water tank, I would have seen it. I did expect to get a visit from the police, having been an associate of Tate's. It would be ridiculous of me to have a gun near me. Jackie Street and myself have access there, apart from Darren Nichols. On the 5th of December, it was the days before completion, and I knew full well on the 6th, Meadow Cottage was probably going to be mine. I was at Meadow Cottage on the 5th of December with Nichols and Reed. I had to show them exactly what I wanted done. Initially, Nichols was going to do the wiring, but wish I'd spoken to him before, and a red aerosol marker was used to indicate the sockets. I was doing a survey, taking measurements to put into the computer. They were there all day. It was arranged to start on Saturday the 9th of December. Darren Nichols told me he was doing things elsewhere, so we could not start on the 6th of December. On the 6th of December, I had plans for that day. I usually went to work in the morning to Meadow Cottage to check things out, because it was frequently broken into. I took wheelbarrows, buckets, ladders and general stuff I knew I would definitely want. Nothing was touched on the 6th of December. I was there for 1.5 hours, finishing my survey. I got back to Oaklands around about 11:45. I had plans for Wimes to retrieve my trailer from his relation. I had plans for that. It was a 2-wheeled 8x4 trailer I'd made. It was at Bullpen with Dennis Wimes. He had taken it to Bullpen from the workshop at T&T about a week before, 5 to 6 days, maybe longer. He took it away to try to sell it. I needed it at Meadow Cottage. It was a very light 2-wheeled trailer. You can pile rubbish in it. There was much to be done at Meadow Cottage. Jack Wimes went down on the 5th of December to get it himself, but Dennis Wimes wasn't there, so Jack came back to me on the way back. He was coming the next day in the tractor. I wanted to pick up a compressor from Gordon Stevens at Felixstowe, which was mine that he'd borrowed. I tried to ring Gordon Stevens before 2 p.m. on the landline, but there was no answer. 5 minutes to midday would probably be the phone call, which is on the 2026 on the schedule. 3 minutes to 2, 13:57, was my mobile to Stevens' landline. I was on the road. I would expect to have my mobile with me that afternoon. I didn't use any public telephone box that afternoon. I had no occasion to. By public telephone box, I of course mean referring to the phone calls from the Sorrel House Public House at Barham. I didn't use any public telephone box that afternoon. I had no occasion to. I explained on my way back to pick up the compressor. It was a standard arrangement with Stevens that we met halfway. I arranged with Stevens to meet me at AJ's on the A12. On the 6th of December, Darren Nichols was asking me if I'd approach Wimes to do something for him. He wanted a vehicle picked up. I hadn't expected to hear from him on the 6th. I expected him to be in Sunbury. I knew he was working for Truly somewhere, but I didn't know he was there. I phoned Nichols' mobile and a total stranger answered the phone. He said Nichols wasn't there, and I said tell him Mick, returned his message. I phoned on my mobile to Jack Wimes to find out what time he'd be arriving at Oaklands that day. That was the reason for that call. At 15:06, I was back on the road, having retrieved the compressor, was back on the A12, going back to Oaklands, having seen Stevens. At 15:08, once again, I rang Wimes and told him to come via Oaklands. He was going to Meadow Cottage to deliver the tractor. I was back to Oaklands about 4:10 or 4:15. 15:57 was my first contact with Nichols that day to actually speak to him. I inquired what he wanted, and he said he'd made arrangements through Jack what he had to do. Nothing else was discussed. So that was the reason for that call. I didn't ask Nichols to meet me at Mark's Tay. Nichols was on the phone habitually. He could be a pain in the butt. Jack was at home all day long. The 14:39 Nichols call from the mobile to my mobile, I was about to leave home at that time. On this call, Nichols had asked me if I'd actually seen Wimes, and he wanted to confirm that Wimes was picking up the Passat. That was the reason for that call. I'd seen Jack at 4 o'clock at Oaklands in his transit van pulling the trailer with the tractor on the go to Meadow Cottage. I had to give him a set of keys. The tractor was dropped there. I had expected Jack and I to be the ones to go to Bullpen. Jack told me he'd made an arrangement with Nichols to pick up the Passat, so I decided to go on my own to Bullpen. Jack told me where it was exactly. Jack was going to do his things, drop off the tractor and trailer and go to Brewers to talk to a man about a digger. Jackie and I left Oaklands at 4:45. I'm 100% sure about that, in the Renault 21. The Hilux was at Oaklands, but it had trestles and a concrete mixer on it that had to go to Meadow Cottage. There is only one garage on that side of the road. It is the Texaco filling station. I put 25 quid's worth of petrol in the vehicle, 4-star. I paid by Visa card and signed with my original signature and was given a copy of the voucher. I'd be entitled to put the petrol through in my accounts and I was given a till receipt. The voucher was left in the office at home on a crocodile clip where receipts are put. I was arrested on the 13th of May 1996 and I was anxious that those two documents were traced. I gave instructions to Chris Bowen to trace them. He hasn't produced to me the actual voucher, but he's produced a copy of the till receipt that was given on the 6th of December. Jackie was in the car when I bought the petrol. At 17:10 I got back in the car at the petrol station and drove off to Tesco's, about 5 minutes away, and was there for about 5 minutes, and it was 6 or 7 minutes past 5. We wanted to get 2 bottles of wine. Jackie went in to get it, and got it while I sat in the car. A phone call at 17:12 from Jack Worms to my mobile phone was Worms saying he was supposed to have left the keys at Meadow Cottage, but he was at Brewer's at the time. He said he'd got them with him, and if he got time he would drop the keys in. If not, he would sort it out later. Then we were back on the main road, the A12. There was snow on the side of the road, and the roads were wet, but not hazardous. That time of night, it wasn't a case of Worms and I were driving in convoy towards the halfway house. The only time I saw Jack Worms was at 4 o'clock at my house. The 1803 call was an ordinary call for specific directions. Bullpen is not a very big place. I must have been dialing the number as I crossed the flyover. There was a little turning on the right which half confused me, and I rang him for specific directions. I'd never been there before or since. The trailer was sitting outside the premises. I knocked on the door, walked away and loaded the trailer up. There was nobody around. I knocked again, but there was nobody home. We left immediately back to Oaklands. I was there less than 2 minutes. The 1809 call to Jack was to tell him I'd picked up the trailer and no one was there, and I was on my way home. That was just in case somebody thought it had been stolen. I didn't go to the Hungry Horse. I didn't go anywhere near Rettendon. I didn't stop on my way back to Oaklands. I took the most obvious route back and was home at Oaklands about 7:25. Phyllis Stanbrook and her daughter Gemma were coming to view the bungalow. I've known Phyllis since she was 16. She's my ex-wife's sister. We get on reasonably well, but we did not see a lot of each other. She's in Point Clear where my mother lives. It was arranged a few days ago when we met on the street. I said Oaklands was on the market if anyone was interested. I was eager to get rid of it and willing to drop the price. Gemma and Phyllis visited that evening on the 6th of December and arrived just as arranged at 7:30 that evening on the dot. That would have been 5 minutes before I got back from Bullpen. They left about 9:15. There was just the 4 of us, and the idea was to view the bungalow. There was bottles of wine, sausage rolls, and they had a look around. They also looked at photographs. 3 or 4 days later to a week, I knew they weren't going to buy the property. Neither of them visited Oaklands at any other time around about the 6th of December. I was there continuously for the rest of the evening. The 2018 phone call from my landline to my mobile is me because I was waiting for a call from Worms. The only way I could tell whether my mobile is functionable is to ring it with my landline. There are high power cables very close to my house, and you have literally to move the phone about the room to make it work. The next call, 1821, from my landline to Worms lasting 23 seconds. That call to Worms was me ringing Worms to see if they'd got any new arrangements for a digger. A call at 9 o'clock was from Stevens to me. That's the old hippie who rings me up now and again, Gordon Stevens. I may have cut him short. I didn't try to contact Nichols on the evening of the 6th of December. Nichols rang me on the following day, the 7th of December, at 17:19. I can only assume that was something to do with the work to be carried out. He was providing stuff for the electrics. I saw Nichols quite frequently. At 18:40 on the 9th of December, he rang me. When he rang me, I was at the cottage. There was a time there was a lot of discussion about these murders. The death of Tate was discussed over quite a period of time between Nichols and me. I never confessed to these killings. I mentioned to Nichols that Sarah Saunders had said she'd phoned Pat Tate. There was a number of things discussed with Nichols. He didn't show an interest in the rib, and he knew I had the rib because I'd spoken to him about it. The book, Teach Yourself Navigation, was my book, and to be honest with you, it went missing. So what I'm saying, I didn't lend it to Nichols, it had just gone. Nichols was someone you want to keep a distance from. He was handy to have around when cheap wiring was concerned. Nichols gave me a crate of beer and a couple of bottles of wine at Christmas. Jackie and I purchased Christmas presents for his 2 little girls. He'd been to Oaklands with his wife after the killings. On the 27th of December, he arrived with a model plane. He brought the children over in April to see the rabbits. We had 2 bottles of wine. After the 6th of December, his attitude was as per usual. He was a very nosy person, always asking questions. Early February in 1996, I started to get strange calls on the phone from Irish men.